The art room surveillance footage would later show exactly 17 seconds between when Coach Brad Hutchinson cornered 23-year-old Miss Emma Winters and when her hidden body camera captured him tearing the silk blouse right off her shoulder. But it was the moment she hijacked the entire school's PA system to broadcast his confession that turned Westfield High into ground zero for the biggest teacher harassment scandal in California history. Before that Tuesday morning at 8:45 a.m., nobody believed the young first-year art teacher's complaints about the 48-year-old wrestling coach who ruled the athletic department like his personal kingdom. Emma Winters had arrived at Westfield High School in August with everything stacked against her. Fresh out of her teaching credential program at UC Berkeley, she was the youngest faculty member by nearly a decade, the only woman in the visual arts department, and the replacement for Mr. Henderson, a beloved 60-year-old teacher who'd retired after 30 years. The other teachers barely acknowledged her in the faculty lounge, the students tested her patience daily, and the administration seemed to view her as a temporary inconvenience until they could hire someone more experienced. But it was Coach Brad Hutchinson who made her life a living nightmare from day one. Standing 6'4" with the build of a former college linebacker gone slightly soft, Hutchinson commanded respect through intimidation. His teams had won 7 state championships in 15 years, bringing in millions in alumni donations and scholarship opportunities. The trophy case outside the main office gleamed with evidence of his success, and his influence extended far beyond the wrestling mats. He sat on the hiring committee, controlled the athletic budget that dwarfed most academic departments, and had the principal's personal cell number on speed dial. Emma first encountered him during new teacher orientation. She'd been setting up her classroom, arranging easels and organizing paint supplies, when he appeared in her doorway without knocking. His eyes traveled slowly from her paint-stained sneakers to her messy bun, lingering too long at points in between. "You're the new art girl," he said. Not a question, but a statement. Mighty young to be teaching high school. "How old are you?" "Sweetheart." "Miss Winters," she corrected firmly, straightening her spine despite the flutter of anxiety in her chest. "And I'm qualified, which is what matters." He chuckled, the sound low and condescending. "Feisty. I like that. Tell you what, my office is right down the hall from here. You need anything, you just come find me. I take care of the pretty teachers." The way he said "take care" made her skin crawl, but Emma forced a polite smile and turned back to her supplies. She heard him linger in the doorway for another moment before his heavy footsteps retreated down the hall. That was August. By November, his helpfulness had escalated into something far more sinister. It started with seemingly innocent encounters. He'd appear in her classroom during her prep period, claiming he needed to check on the ventilation system or measure something for new equipment. He'd stand too close, his massive frame blocking her exit, while he asked personal questions about her weekend plans or whether she had a boyfriend. When she tried to maintain professional distance, he'd laugh and accuse her of being uptight or too serious. Then came the touches, a hand on her lower back as he squeezed past in the hallway. Despite plenty of room, fingers brushing her hand when she passed him documents in staff meetings. Once, he'd actually tucked a strand of hair behind her ear during a faculty mixer, murmuring that she looked prettier with her hair down. When she flinched away, he'd given her a look that was equal parts amusement and warning. Emma documented everything in a journal she kept locked in her desk drawer. Dates, times, exact quotes, witnesses present. She'd learned about the importance of documentation during her student teaching seminar, but she'd never imagined actually needing it. By October, the journal was nearly half full. She'd tried the proper channels first. A meeting with Assistant Principal Janet Morrison yielded nothing but a sympathetic smile and a suggestion to try not to be alone with him. Her union representative, a tired-looking man named Dale, told her that without concrete evidence, it would be her word against a beloved coach. With 15 years of sterling reputation, Even some female teachers she'd cautiously approached brushed off her concerns. "Brad's just friendly," insisted Miss Patterson from the English department. "He flirts with everyone. Don't take it personally." But Emma knew the difference between friendly and predatory. She'd seen the way he looked at her, like a wolf sizing up prey. She'd noticed how he only seemed to need things from her classroom, never from Mr. Chen's chemistry lab next door. She'd observed how his friendliness was reserved for women under 30, particularly those without tenure or strong allies on staff. The breaking point came in early November. Emma had started varying her routes through the building, timing her arrivals and departures to avoid him. She'd even begun eating lunch in her locked classroom, rather than risk the faculty lounge. But Hutchinson was nothing if not persistent. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Emma was alone in the art supply closet, organizing paintbrushes for the next day's classes. The closet was tucked into an alcove at the back of her classroom, barely 6 feet by 4 feet. With shelves climbing to the ceiling, she was stretching to reach a box of charcoal pencils when she heard the classroom door open and close. "Hello," she called out, assuming it was a student staying after school. "I'll be right there." Heavy footsteps approached, and her stomach dropped when Hutchinson's frame filled the closet doorway. He was wearing his usual coaching attire, Westfield wrestling polo, stretched across his broad chest, athletic shorts. Despite the November chilled Ballyou have dant ready of Notteric Talon, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Working late again, Emma?" He used her first name deliberately, knowing she'd corrected him dozens of times. "You know what they say about all work and no play? I'm just finishing up," she said, trying to keep her voice steady as she clutched the box of pencils. "Excuse me, I need to get past." Instead of moving aside, he stepped into the closet, pulling the door partially closed behind him. The small space suddenly felt airless. His cologne something aggressively masculine and applied too liberally, making her eyes water. "You've been avoiding me," he said, voice low and accusatory. "That's not very neighborly. I thought we were friends." "We're colleagues," Emma corrected, pressing herself against the shelves. "And I haven't been avoiding anyone. I've been busy with midterms." He moved closer, and she could see the calculation in his eyes. They were alone in the art wing after hours. The nearest occupied classroom was probably in the main building. If she screamed, would anyone even hear her? "You know," he said, reaching past her to supposedly grab something from a high shelf, his body pressing against hers in the process. "You'd have a much easier time here if you learned to be a team player. I've got a lot of influence at this school. I could make things very comfortable for you. Or very difficult." His hand dropped from the shelf to her waist, fingers playing with the hem of her blouse. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs, her mind racing through self-defense techniques she'd learned in college but never had to use. "Don't touch me," she said firmly, trying to duck under his arm. He blocked her easily, his other hand coming up to brace against the shelves, caging her in. "Come on, Emma. Don't be like that. You think I haven't noticed how you look at me, the way you dress to get my attention?" The accusation was so absurd she almost laughed. She wore conservative professional attire, everyday slacks or knee-length skirts, modest blouses, sensible shoes she could stand in all day. But she recognized the tactic, the way predators flip the script to make victims feel responsible for their own harassment. "I'm leaving now," she said, voice stronger than she felt. "Move, or I'll scream." His eyes hardened. "You do that, and I'll tell everyone you came onto me." Who do you think they'll believe? The decorated coach who's been here 15 years? Or the desperate new teacher trying to sleep her way to tenure? The threat hung between them like a blade. Emma knew he was right. She'd seen it play out before in other schools, other industries. The person with power always controlled the narrative, but then his hand moved from her waist to her chest, fingers toying with the top button of her blouse. And something inside her snapped. She drove her knee up hard, not quite connecting with his groin, but close enough to make him stumble backward in surprise. She bolted from the closet, grabbing her purse and laptop bag with shaking hands. "You're going to regret that," he called after her. "Voice dangerous now. You have no idea who you're messing with." Emma ran to her car and drove home in a blur of tears and adrenaline. That night, she called her best friend Sarah, a lawyer in San Francisco, and told her everything. Sarah's response was immediate and practical. "You need evidence," she said. "Without it, he's right. It becomes he said, she said, and he's got all the institutional power. But Emma, this is serious. He's escalating. You need to protect yourself." That weekend, Emma made a decision that would change everything. She used her first paycheck from teaching to purchase something she'd never imagined needing, a tiny body camera designed to look like a decorative pin. It was expensive and early, $800, but it could record high-definition video and audio for up to 10 hours. She also bought a voice-activated recorder for her desk drawer and downloaded an app that would automatically back up any recordings to cloud storage. On Monday morning, she pinned the camera to her blazer, disguising it as a vintage brooch she'd supposedly inherited from her grandmother. The weight of it felt strange but comforting, like armor made of technology instead of steel. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Hutchinson seemed to be avoiding her, and Emma allowed herself to hope that maybe her knee to his thigh had scared him off. She continued wearing the camera daily, just in case, but began to relax slightly. Her students were preparing for the winter showcase, and she threw herself into helping them perfect their pieces. Then came Tuesday, November 20th. Emma had arrived early to set up for her advanced placement art class. The school was nearly empty at 7:30 a.m. Just a few dedicated students in the library and the custodial staff making their rounds. She was arranging still life objects on a table when she heard the art room door lock click. She turned to find Hutchinson standing by the door, key in hand. He was dressed differently, today dark jeans and a button-down shirt instead of his usual athletic wear. There was something different in his expression too, a coldness that made her instinctively reach for her phone. "Put it down," he ordered, and something in his voice made her comply. "We need to talk about your attitude problem." "There's nothing to talk about," Emma said, forcing her voice to remain calm while mentally checking that her camera was recording. The tiny red light was hidden by the brooch's design, but she could feel its slight warmth against her chest. "Please unlock the door. Students will be arriving soon." "Not for another hour," he said, stalking toward her with purposeful steps. Plenty of time to come to an understanding. Emma backed up until she hit the supply closet, the same closet where he'd cornered her before. Her hands fumbled behind her for the handle, thinking she could lock herself inside and call for help. But he was too fast. His hand slammed against the door beside her head, the sound echoing in the empty room. "You embarrassed me," he growled, his face inches from hers. "Made me look weak? Do you know what the other coaches said?" They laughed. "Said I couldn't handle a little girl playing hard to get." "I'm not playing anything," Emma said firmly, though her voice shook. "I'm your colleague, not your conquest. This is harassment, and I'll report it." He laughed, the sound ugly and sharp. "Report it to who?" "Morrison. Who told you to avoid being alone with me? The union rep who won't lift a finger without evidence? Face it, Amethyst School runs on athletics, and I run athletics. Cross me, and you'll be gone by Christmas." His free hand reached for her face, and Emma turned her head sharply. "Don't touch me. I'm warning you." "Warning me?" He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "You think you can threaten me? You're nothing. A replaceable art teacher with no allies and no power. I could end your career with one phone call." "Then why haven't you?" Emma challenged, finding courage in the knowledge that every word was being recorded. His face darkened. "Because I don't waste potential. You could be an asset if you'd just cooperate. There's a department head position opening up next year. I have influence on that committee. Play nice, and it could be yours. I don't want anything from you except to be left alone." "Wrong answer." His hand moved from her chin to her collar, fingers wrapping around the fabric of her cream silk blouse, a birthday gift from her mother that she'd worn for confidence. Emma grabbed his wrist, trying to pull his hand away, but he was too strong. "Such a pretty thing," he murmured, his thumb stroking the silk. "Too nice for a teacher's salary? Unless you've got a sugar daddy somewhere? Is that it? Playing innocent while you've got someone else paying your bills?" "Let go," Emma demanded, her free hand fumbling behind her for anything she could use as a weapon. Her fingers found a palette knife, dull but better than nothing. He must have seen the movement because his grip tightened on her blouse. "Drop it," he ordered. "You pull a weapon on me, and I'll have you arrested for assault. How's that for evidence?" Emma let the palette knife clatter to the floor, her mind racing. She needed him to say more, to be clearer about what he was doing. The camera was recording, but would it be enough? "Please," she said, changing tactics. "Just tell me what you want, and let me go." "What I want?" He leaned closer, his breath hot on her face. "I want you to understand your place. I want you to stop acting like you're better than everyone else. And I want you to be grateful for my attention instead of running away like a scared child." "I'm not scared of you," Emma lied. "You should be." His grip on her blouse tightened, and she heard the fabric strain. "I've ended careers for less disrespect than you've shown me, but I'm willing to be generous. One kiss. Right now, and we'll call it even. You can go back to your paints and papers, and I'll forget this whole thing happened." "No." The word had barely left her mouth when he yanked hard on her blouse. The silk tore with a sharp, ripping sound, the fabric splitting from collar to shoulder seam. Cool air hit her exposed skin, her bra strap visible where the blouse hung loose. For a moment, they both froze. Emma in shock, Hutchinson seemingly surprised by his own violence. Then his expression shifted to something calculating. "Look what you made me do," he said, voice almost conversational. "Now you'll have to explain to everyone how your blouse got torn. Unless you want to say you did it yourself?" Another desperate plea for attention from the lonely new teacher? Emma's shock transformed into rage. "You just assaulted me. That's battery. It's on camera." His eyes darted to her chest, and for the first time, she saw uncertainty flicker across his face, but it was quickly replaced by contempt. "Nice try, but I don't see any cameras in here. And even if you recorded this on your phone, it's illegal to record someone without consent in California. Two-party state." "Sweetheart, any recording would be inadmissible." Emma smiled then, a cold expression that made him step back slightly. "California is a two-party consent state for private conversations. But this isn't private, it's a classroom in a public school. And more importantly, you just committed a crime. Battery trumps wiretapping laws when it comes to evidence collection. My friend's a lawyer. She made sure I understood my rights." The color drained from his face as he finally noticed the small brooch on her blazer. Its tiny lens pointed directly at him. His hand released her ruined blouse as if it burned him. "You manipulative little," he started, raising his hand. Emma didn't give him the chance to finish. She ducked under his arm and ran for her desk, where her laptop was already open. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up the program she'd installed weeks ago, just in case. The same program that, with the right administrator password, could access the school's PA system. She'd gotten the password from Kevin Chen, the senior who helped with IT support. He'd given it to her in exchange for a recommendation letter for art school, never imagining she'd use it for this. "Stop!" Hutchinson roared, charging after her. But Emma had already hit enter. The morning announcements weren't due to start for another 15 minutes. But suddenly, every speaker in the school crackled to life. "This is Miss Winters in room 304. Her voice echoed through the halls, cafeteria, gym, and every classroom. "I need immediate assistance. Coach Hutchinson has assaulted me and torn my clothing. I have video evidence. Please send security and administration immediately." She could hear the feedback from the hallway speakers mixing with Hutchinson's cursing. He lunged for the laptop, but Emma grabbed it and held it high, Continuing to speak into the built-in microphone, Coach Hutchinson is currently in my classroom attempting to destroy evidence. He tore my blouse after I refused his advances. This is being recorded and uploaded to cloud storage. I repeat, I need immediate assistance in room 304. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Students, teachers, and security, all responding to the unprecedented use of the PA system. Hutchinson looked between Emma and the door, calculation in his eyes. He could try to grab the laptop, but people were already approaching. He could flee, but that would look like guilt. He chose a third option, spin. "She's lying," he shouted, loud enough for the approaching crowd to hear. "She came on to me. She's been stalking me for months. And when I rejected her, she attacked me." Emma kept the laptop microphone active, ensuring every word was broadcast school-wide. "Coach Hutchinson is now claiming I attacked him. I have video evidence of the entire encounter, including him locking my classroom door, threatening my career, demanding I kiss him, and then tearing my blouse when I refused." The door burst open. Principal Davies stood there, face flushed with anger or embarrassment. It was hard to tell. Behind him crowded Assistant Principal Morrison, 2 security guards, and what looked like half the early arrival student body, phones already out and recording. Emma stood behind her desk, laptop still in hand, her torn blouse hanging off one shoulder. She looked small and vulnerable, but unbroken, her chin raised in defiance. Hutchinson stood in the middle of the room, his large frame suddenly seeming diminished as dozens of eyes took in the scene. "What is the meaning of this?" Davies demanded, though his eyes had already taken in Emma's torn clothing and Hutchinson's guilty position, sexual assault and battery. Emma said clearly, her voice still carrying through the PA system. "I have it all on video. Principal Davies. Every threat, every unwanted touch. And the moment he tore my blouse off my shoulder, she's lying," Hutchinson insisted. But his voice lacked conviction now. "Check her computers. He's probably recording illegally. California law allows recording of crimes in progress," Emma interrupted, "and exempts public employees in public buildings during the commission of their duties." Article 1. Section 1 of the California Constitution establishes that all people have inalienable rights to defending life and liberty and protecting property. Recording someone committing battery against you falls under that protection. The crowd murmured, impressed by her legal knowledge. Several students were live streaming now, the incident already spreading beyond the school walls. "Turn off the PA system," Davies ordered, by his politician's instincts finally kicking in. Emma complied but made sure to announce first, "I'm turning off the PA at Principal Davies' request. The full video will be provided to law enforcement and my attorney. I'm also invoking my Title IX rights and demanding immediate protection from retaliation." The silence that followed was deafening. Hutchinson looked around the room, perhaps finally understanding that his 15-year reign was over. The students' phones captured his expression the moment a predator realized he'd become prey. "Everyone back to class?" Davies barked, but nobody moved. "Now, we're witnesses," a voice called out from the crowd. Emma recognized Marcus Washington, the student body president. "We have a right to ensure Miss Winter's safety." Other students voiced agreement. In the age of Me Too and viral videos, they understood the power of bearing witness. Davies looked like he wanted to suspend them all, but knew the optics would be disastrous. "Coach Hutchinson, my office," he said instead. "Now, I'm not going anywhere until she admits she set me up." Hutchinson snarled, his carefully maintained image cracking completely. "This little coach," Davies' voice cracked like a whip. "My office or I call the police myself." Emma spoke up. "I'm calling them, regardless. This is assault, and I'm pressing charges." She pulled out her phone with her free hand, her other still clutching the laptop with its precious evidence. The security guards moved to flank Hutchinson, not touching him, but making it clear he needed to leave. He looked around one more time. Seeing no allies among the crowd, Even the other coaches who'd arrived looked uncomfortable, and distance already growing between them and their former colleague. "This isn't over," he said to Emma, his voice low and threatening. "You're right," she replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's just beginning. Every person you've harassed, every complaint that was buried, every victim who was silenced it, all comes out now." Something in her voice must have convinced him because his face went pale. How many others had there been over the years? How many complaints had Davies and the others helped bury to protect their championship coach? He left then, the security guards escorting him through a gauntlet of recording phones. Emma heard later that someone had already posted the video to TikTok with the caption, "Coach gets destroyed by art teacher with receipts." It had 10,000 views within an hour. "Miss Winters," Principal Davies approached carefully, as if she were a bomb that might explode. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No?" Emma's voice was firm. "I'm done with private discussions. I want a union representative present for any conversations. I want a copy of all previous complaints against Coach Hutchinson from HR, and I want written assurance that I won't face any retaliation for reporting this assault." Davies' jaw tightened. "You just broadcast a personnel matter to the entire school without authorization. That alone is grounds for banned." "For what?" Sarah's voice cut through the room. Emma's best friend stood in the doorway, having driven down from San Francisco the moment Emma texted her what was happening. She was in full lawyer mode power suit, briefcase, and an expression that had made opposing counsel cry more than once. For protecting herself when the administration failed to? For documenting assault? For using available resources to ensure her safety when locked in a room with a man twice her size? "And you are?" Davies asked, though his tone had shifted to cautious politeness. "Sarah Chen, attorney at law. I represent Miss Winters. I'd advise you to stop talking before you dig the liability hole any deeper." She turned to Emma. "You okay?" Emma nodded, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline began to fade. "I got it all on video." "Good girl." "Marcus, was it?" Sarah addressed the student body president. "Would you and a few others mind staying as witnesses while Miss Winters provides her statement to the police?" Marcus nodded eagerly, and several other students volunteered. Davies looked like he wanted to object, but wisely stayed silent. The next few hours blurred together. Police arrived and took Emma's statement. The body camera footage was reviewed by officers who couldn't hide their disgust at Hutchinson's behavior. He was arrested at his home 2 hours later, charged with battery, false imprisonment, and sexual assault. The mugshot would be on the evening news. His carefully maintained image destroyed in a single frame, but the real explosion came when Emma's PA announcement went viral. Number room 304 began trending on Twitter. Students from years past began sharing their own stories about Hutchinson. 3 former students came forward with allegations of assault. A former teacher revealed she'd been driven out of the school after reporting him. The dam had broken, and the flood was unstoppable. By lunch, news vans lined the street outside Westfield High. Parents demanded answers. The school board called an emergency meeting. Davies was suspended pending investigation into his handling of previous complaints. It turned out there had been 12 formal complaints against Hutchinson over the years, all buried or dismissed. Emma sat in her repaired classroom. Sarah had made sure the district immediately fixed the lock and installed additional security cameras, watching the chaos unfold through her window. Students had been stopping by all morning, offering support and sharing their own stories. The art room had become a kind of sanctuary, a place where truth had finally won. "You know they'll try to make your life hell," Sarah warned. Sitting on a paint-stained stool, "The old boys network doesn't go down without a fight." Emma nodded, fingering the brooch camera she still wore. "I know, but I'm not alone anymore." As if to prove her point, a knock came at the door. Marcus Washington entered with several other students carrying boxes. "We started a collection," he explained, setting down the boxes, "art supplies, to replace anything that got damaged. And this," he handed her an envelope. Inside was a card signed by over 200 students. The message on front read, "Thank you for being brave. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for showing us how." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "I just did what I had to do." "No," Marcus said firmly. "You did what was right. There's a difference." Later that afternoon, as Emma finally prepared to go home, Sarah insisted on driving her. She found Principal Davies waiting by her car. He looked haggard. His usual polished appearance crumpled. "I suppose you're happy," he said bitterly. 15 years of excellence, destroyed in a morning. Emma studied him. This man who had enabled a predator for over a decade. How many others were there? How many complaints did you ignore? He didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. "I'm 23 years old," Emma said quietly. "This is my first teaching job. I came here to help kids discover art, to maybe make a difference. Instead, I had to fight just to exist safely in my own classroom. So, no, I'm not happy. I'm angry that it came to this. I'm furious that you and others let him hurt people for years. But I'm not sorry for protecting myself." Davies turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you're a hell of a teacher. The kids respect you. That's rare." Emma watched him walk away, knowing it was probably the closest thing to an apology she'd ever get from him. As Sarah drove her home, Emma's phone buzzed constantly with messages of support, interview requests, and notifications about the viral video. She ignored them all, exhausted beyond measure. "You know this is just the beginning," Sarah said gently. "The trial, the media attention, the investigation, it's going to be a long road." Emma nodded, watching familiar streets pass by. "I know, but at least now it's in the light. No more closed doors. No more buried complaints. No more silence." She thought about her camera, still recording, still protecting her. Technology had been her shield when the system failed her, but it was her voice broadcast through every speaker in the school that had truly saved her. Her voice, refusing to be silenced, demanding to be heard. Tomorrow, she'd have to face it all again. The questions, the scrutiny, the inevitable backlash from Hutchinson's supporters. But tonight, she just wanted to rest, to process what had happened, to prepare for the battle ahead. Because Sarah was right, this was just the beginning. The system that had protected predators for decades wouldn't crumble overnight. But Emma had proven something important. Sometimes, all it took was one voice, amplified at the right moment, to start an avalanche. As they pulled into her apartment complex, Emma saw her neighbor Mrs. Chen watering her garden. The elderly woman looked up and gave her a firm nod of approval. Word had already spread. It seemed, "You okay, dear Mrs. Chen called out. Emma considered the question. Was she okay? Her blouse was ruined. Her sense of safety shattered. Her career potentially derailed. But she'd stood up to a predator and won. She'd given voice to years of silenced victims. She'd shown her students that standing up for yourself, while dangerous, was possible. "I will be," she answered honestly, and for the first time since that Tuesday morning began, she actually believed it. The body camera footage would be played in courtrooms and conference rooms for months to come. The PA announcement would become a rallying cry for teachers and students facing harassment. Room 304 would be remembered not as a crime scene but as a place where courage found its voice. But all of that was still to come. For now, Emma Winters, 23-year-old art teacher, an accidental revolutionary. I just wanted to go home, call her mother, and prepare for whatever came next. The revolution, after all, had only just begun. The next morning, Emma woke to find 17 news vans parked outside her apartment complex and her phone with over 300 missed calls. Sarah had stayed the night, sleeping on the couch like a guard dog in designer pajamas, and was already fielding calls when Emma emerged from her bedroom at 6 a.m. "CNN wants an exclusive," Sarah said, covering the phone's mouthpiece. "I'm telling them no interviews until we see how the school district responds." You good with that? Emma nodded, pouring coffee with hands that barely trembled. The bruises on her shoulder where Hutchinson had grabbed her had darkened overnight. Purple-black marks that made her torn blouse seem like evidence of something even worse than what had actually happened. The district called an emergency meeting for 7:30. Sarah continued. They want you there. But I told them you'd only attend with full legal representation and guaranteed protection from retaliation. Through her kitchen window, Emma could see protesters beginning to gather outside Westfield High. Even though school didn't start until 8:15, some carried signs reading, "Protect our teachers" and "End athletic privilege." Others, presumably Hutchinson supporters, held countersigns, "Due process and innocent until proven guilty." By 7 a.m., Emma was dressed in her most conservative suit armor for a different kind of battle. Sarah drove them to school through a back entrance. Avoiding the main parking lot where news crews had set up camp, the district office was packed with school board members, administrators, union representatives, and lawyers. Lots of lawyers. Superintendent Patricia Goldman, a woman who'd built her career on avoiding controversy, looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. "Miss Winters," she began carefully, "we need to discuss yesterday's unauthorized use of the PA system. My client was defending herself against assault." Sarah interrupted smoothly. Any discipline for her survival tactics would be met with immediate legal action for retaliation under Title IX. The room erupted in heated discussion. Emma sat quietly, observing the panic in their eyes. They weren't worried about her safety or the culture that had enabled Hutchinson. They were worried about lawsuits, about their reputation, about the millions in athletic donations that might dry up. After an hour of circular arguments, Goldman finally asked, "What do you want, Miss Winters?" Emma had prepared for this question. Full transparency. Release all complaints against Coach Hutchinson. Implement mandatory harassment training for all staff. Install security cameras in every classroom. Create an independent review board for harassment complaints. And guarantee my job security regardless of the trial outcome. Davies started to object, but Goldman silenced him with a look. He was only there pending his own investigation. A ghost of his former authority. "We'll consider your requests," Goldman said carefully. "In the meantime, we're placing you on paid administrative leave." "No," Emma's voice was firm. "I'm not being punished for being assaulted. I'll be in my classroom today, teaching my students, unless you want to explain to the media why you're suspending the victim." The threat hung in the air. Through the window, they could all see the growing crowd of reporters and protesters. Goldman's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Fine, but we're assigning security to your classroom." "Good," Sarah said. "We'll also need copies of all correspondence regarding this matter. My client is considering a civil suit for the district's failure to provide a safe working environment." Emma returned to room 304 to find it transformed. Students had arrived early to decorate it with supportive messages. Banners reading, "We stand with Miss Winters," and "Art room equals safe space" covered the walls. Her torn blouse from yesterday had been replaced with a new 1EA gift from the Parent-Teacher Association with a note apologizing for the school's failure to protect her. Her first period AP art class filed in quietly, unsure how to act. Emma decided to address it head-on. "I know yesterday was frightening and confusing," she said, standing at the front of the room. "But art has always been about truth, about exposing what others want hidden. Today, we're going to channel our emotions into our work. Your assignment is to create a piece about speaking truth to power." The students dove into their work with unusual intensity. By the end of the period, the room was filled with powerful Picessa sculpture of a shattered trophy case, a painting of mouths opening in silent screams, a collage of torn fabric forming the word "enough." During lunch, 3 former Westfield students arrived at the school. Emma watched from her window as they spoke to reporters, each sharing their own stories about Hutchinson. Rebecca Morrison, now 28 and a successful architect, described how he'd cornered her in the equipment room her senior year. Jennifer Liu, unbroken, revealed he'd groped her during a sports physical www. Carmen Rodriguez, studying law at Stanford, explained how her complaint had been buried and she'd been threatened with losing her athletic scholarship. The stories kept coming. By evening, 12 women had come forward spanning 15 years. The pattern was clear: young female students or new teachers, always vulnerable, always without power. The district's carefully maintained silence had enabled a predator for over a decade. That night, Emma finally went home to find her voicemail full of support from teachers across the country. One message stood out from Miss Planck's Brasses, Patricia Henderson, the beloved art teacher she'd replaced. "I didn't retire, honey," the elderly woman's voice said. "I was forced out after reporting Brad Hutchinson for harassing my student teacher. They gave me a choice: leave quietly with my pension or fight and lose everything. I chose survival then. I'm glad you chose differently. Give them hell." Emma saved the message and called her back. They talked for 2 hours, Patricia sharing names of others who'd been silenced, building a network of survivors that spanned years. The preliminary hearing came 2 weeks later. Hutchinson appeared in court in an ill-fitting suit, his athletic swagger replaced by desperate attempts at looking sympathetic. His lawyer, predictably, tried to paint Emma as a troubled young woman seeking attention. Then the prosecutor played the body camera footage. The courtroom fell silent as they watched Hutchinson lock the door, tower over Emma, demand a kiss, and finally tear her blouse. His words echoed in the sterile room. "You're nothing, a replaceable art teacher with no allies and no power." Emma testified for 3 hours, detailing the months of harassment, the failed attempts to report it, the fear that had become her daily companion. When the defense attorney tried to suggest she'd entrapped Hutchinson, she responded clearly. "I protected myself when every system meant to protect me failed. If recording assault is entrapment, then we're telling victims they must choose between evidence and safety. I refuse to accept that choice." The judge agreed. Hutchinson was bound over for trial on multiple charges. Bail was set at $200,000, which he posted immediately, funded by supporters who still believed their championship coach was being railroaded. The trial itself became a media sensation. Every day, Emma walked past protesters, some supporting her, others calling her a liar. And worse, Sarah hired security after someone left a dead rat in Emma's mailbox with a note saying, "Snitches, get stitches." But for every threat, there were 10 messages of support. Students she'd never taught sent artwork inspired by her story. Teachers from around the world shared their own experiences. A hashtag number, Room 304 Revolution, trended globally as people shared stories of standing up to abuse. The trial lasted 2 weeks. 14 women testified about Hutchinson's behavior over the years. The district's HR director admitted under oath that complaints had been systematically buried to protect the athletic program. Davies broke down on the stand, finally admitting he'd prioritized championships over student safety. Hutchinson's defense crumbled when his own assistant coach testified that he'd witnessed multiple incidents but been told to mind his own business if he wanted to keep his job. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Hutchinson was sentenced to 4 years in prison and lifetime registration as a sex offender. The courtroom erupted in tears and applause as the verdict was read. Emma felt no joy, only a deep exhaustion and relief that it was over. But the real victory came a month later when the district announced comprehensive reforms. The entire administration was restructured. Davies was permanently removed, replaced by Dr. Maria Santos, a principal known for her zero-tolerance approach to harassment. An independent review board was established. Every classroom got security cameras and panic buttons. Mandatory training on harassment and assault became part of every staff member's annual requirements. Emma returned to her classroom to find it full of flowers from grateful parents and students. She'd become something she'd never wanted to be: symbol, a hero. Ah, revolutionary. But she was also still a teacher, and that's what mattered most. On the last day of school, her AP art students presented their final Projexa collaborative mural depicting a phoenix rising from shattered trophies and torn fabric. At the center was a simple PA microphone transformed into a torch, lighting the darkness. "You taught us that art isn't just about beauty," Marcus Washington said, speaking for the class. "It's about truth, about courage, about refusing to be silenced." Emma stood before the mural, tears streaming down her face. She thought about the scared young teacher who'd arrived at Westfield 9 months ago, desperate to fit in, to avoid trouble. That woman was gone, replaced by someone harder but also stronger. Sarah found her there after the students had left, staring at the mural. "Any regrets?" her friend asked gently. Emma touched the painted microphone, remembering the moment she'd hijacked the PA system, the moment she'd decided her voice mattered more than her fear. "No," she said firmly. "No regrets." That summer, Emma was offered positions at prestigious private schools, speaking engagements, book deals. She turned them all down. Instead, she returned to Westfield High, to room 304, to the students who needed her, because the revolution wasn't over, it had only just begun. Every day, in classrooms across the country, teachers and students were finding their voices, standing up to abuse, refusing to be silenced. The broken system was slowly healing, one brave voice at a time. And in a small art room in California, Emma Winters continued to teach the most important lesson of all: that sometimes the greatest masterpiece you can create is the moment you refuse to be a victim any longer. The body camera now sat in her desk drawer, unused but ready. A reminder that protection comes in many forms, but the strongest shield will always be the courage to speak your truth. No matter who tries to silence you, room 304 remained the art classroom. But it had become something more, a symbol that even in the darkest corners of institutional failure, light could break through. All it took was one voice, amplified at the right moment, refusing to be silenced. And somewhere, in schools and offices and homes around the world, others were finding their own voices, their own courage, their own moment to say, "Enough." The revolution continued, one brave voice at a time.